Hi, I'm Renee Moorefield, CEO of WisdomWorks. Over the years, I've had the genuine privilege of speaking with leaders who carry real responsibility for others. What stays with me isn't their titles, it's how they understand the human impact of the choices they make. In this conversation with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Rich Carmona, former U.S. Surgeon General, we explore the essential truth that trust is the bedrock of leadership. It's also the foundation of human thriving. Rich shares stories from his life that remind us leadership isn't about position, it's about stewardship, about creating the conditions where people can bring their full humanity to work. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, I am excited that we're here. You have become a friend and colleague for many years now, and I'm really appreciative to do this interview with you. I think you know at WisdomWorks, we're committed to the type of leadership in the world and to uplifting leaders who are dedicated to supporting healthier workplaces, healthier lives, and brands that advance thriving around the world. So we're interested in how do we, as leaders, transform the imbalances and the uncertainties and the stressors in our world into possibilities for new innovation, where people in the planet can thrive. So that change is really critical. Your life's work, I know, has been a combination, really rare combination of science, of service, and of a dedication to humanity from your time as U.S. Surgeon General to all the other ways. And there are so many I've learned from you in the last, what, how many years? We have been colleagues,
Yes,
many years now,
years.
that you advance health and well-being leadership. So I'd love to have this conversation with you about how leadership that prioritizes thriving, human thriving, can also become a path to peace. I think you are uniquely qualified, given the work you've done around the world, in the military and out of the military, to talk about this in ways that no one else can. So thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
Well, thanks for the privilege and the opportunity. I always enjoy our conversations. They're always enlightening.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, for me too. So I sent you some questions, but honestly, we'll use those questions as a guide, but then we'll go wherever the conversation needs to go. So this will be really organic.
Sure.
The first question I sent you was, from your perspective, what does it mean to be a thriving leader given the level of complexities and division in today's world? What does it mean to be a thriving leader and to be a leader that cares about advancing thriving?
Well, first and foremost, the thriving denotes to me something very positive, an environment that is welcoming, that is inclusive, that is inspiring, and that gives everybody opportunity. And so the leader, the well-informed, well-educated, sensitive, compassionate leader recognizes that to lead, the first thing that they must have is integrity. People have to trust you, and trust is earned. So you can have people give you a title that makes you a manager, a chief, or whatever those titles are that says you're in charge of something. But if you haven't earned it, you can't effectively be a leader. And as I teach leadership, whether it's the CEOs or whether it's in the military at our war colleges, it's the foundation of leadership, having integrity. And when you have integrity and people trust you, they will follow you in battle, even if their lives are at risk, because they trust the decisions you're making.
Mhm.
Around the boardroom, sitting with public boards that I sit on, it's the same thing. You earn the trust of the board to be able to weigh in on critical decisions that will affect the health, safety, and security of the nation or the world.
Mhm.
And people listen because they trust what you're saying. They know that you are not working uh, for self reasons, that you are working selflessly, that you are trying to bring value to whatever the value proposition is, whether it is at a local board or the United States of America. So,
Mhm.
what I've learned in leadership throughout my lifetime is that leadership is a privilege. Leadership is a forever, how would I say, a long lasting educational opportunity because it never stops. The older, more leadership experiences you get, understanding people, personalities, you become a better leader. And
Hmm.
so my first leadership role as a child um, was really, I didn't recognize it until I had to put these ideas together when I was teaching leadership. And I used this picture of me as a 12-year-old boy with my younger brothers and sisters. And my mother said to me, we were poor. We were living in a tenement in New York City in Harlem. And she says, well, Richard, I have to work nights. So you're responsible for your brothers and sisters when I'm not here.
Hmm.
And I'll be home by breakfast and I'll make sure they're okay for breakfast and we'll get them off to school. And I never realized is that the commonality of all leaders is that you are responsible for the destiny of others. And whether you're a 12-year-old kid taking care of your brothers and sisters while mom is at work, or whether you're the Surgeon General of the United States and the health, safety, and security of the United States is one of your mandates, it, all that changes is the scope and scale of the leadership.
Huh.
People have to trust you. You have to have integrity. And when they trust you, they're willing to uh, subordinate their own interests for the greater good of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
I love the connection with trust, and I love that you are really defining integrity with the word trust. I'm thinking about the root word of integrity, integritas, meaning wholeness, really
Yes,
meaning wholeness. So there's something that stays intact, and
yes,
that is all about trust, authenticity, values, that foundation
mhm,
that you live and lead from.
yes.
That is fabulous. And for you, and I bet most people who'd be listening to this, they could think back to a time where, when is the first time you were in the role of leadership, when you stepped into the orientation of I'm responsible. I'm responsible, accountable, I
Yes.
need to be trustworthy. That's fabulous. So you lived, I know a lot about your career, and I'll share that with the listener in the newsletter that I write about this. But you've been in lots of high pressure environments. I'm wondering, how do leaders, and specifically you, sustain their own well-being while they are supporting others?
Well, I think that's a real tough one because I think the mistake, including me, that most leaders uh, do or engage in is that you subordinate your own interest for the greater
Mm,
good.
mm,
So you sleep a little less, you get up a little earlier, you stay up a little later because you're trying to set an example. And that can last for a little while, but eventually it degrades your own ability to lead.
mhm,
So you have to have, self check-in times. Am I sleeping enough? Am I eating well? Am I doing something outside of this endeavor that provides me joy? A workout, meeting with friends, staying connected with community, things like that. So I think that I'm guilty of that myself, and many, many leaders that I know who are willing to give up the sleep and give up the parties and give up the birthday parties and or anniversaries and things that you normally, because this job is so big, I have to do it.
mhm,
And in many of my leadership roles, I have caught myself in that void and recognizing that if I don't maintain my continuity with my own life, I will be less of a leader.
mhm. How do you know when you're off track? Like when I know it sounds like you take some time and you pause and you think about it and you reflect, but how do you know when you're off
Yeah,
track?
you know what, Renee, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, I guess what I'm doing here is framing an approach rather than being specifically instructive on
Mhm,
a, it just, when you're not sleeping well, when you're too tired, when you're sitting in an office in a meeting and you fall asleep, when you feel stressed, when your blood pressure is up. I mean, there's so many
mhm,
different metrics that you know who you are and what normal is for you. And when you start to sense a departure, you're overloaded, you're forgetting a lot of things, short-term memory is being affected, things like that, then maybe you need to kind of pause for a second and say, okay, what do I need to do? For me, my biggest outlet, I would say, is I work out 5 or 6 days, sometimes 7 days a week. I do something for me. And
mhm,
my physical ability is important because it makes me a better leader, and then staying connected with friends, family, and I will tell you probably the greatest joy I get is connecting with my grandkids. And even though I can't physically be with them, we FaceTime all the time, and I learn about what they're doing, and it inspires me to see all the potential that they have. So that's just my way of more or less insulating myself, and not allowing myself to be devoid of a real life, and and so. staying holistic in my approach, taking care of myself. And if I do that, I feel I can be a better leader in whatever leadership position I am afforded, because leadership is a privilege, and you earn the right to be the leader every day. We say in the military that as you get promoted, whether it's more stripes or stars and bars, depending on where you are in leadership, is that there's a honeymoon period. And after that honeymoon period, here's what happens. You get your promotion, there's a ceremony, everybody thanks you and everything. Now you show up. If you have to keep telling people after the first few weeks that you're the leader, you are not the leader. Okay? And it sounds very simple, but when you arrive, those that are allowing you to lead them, that you have been appointed, nominated, promoted, whatever, see that you have a reputation that precedes you. And the best leadership is when the folks can't wait to get you as their leader because they've watched you lead in other positions and they trust you and they see that you're always willing to sacrifice as well as commit selflessly to the greater good of the team, the organization, the nation, whatever it happens to be. So again, I see these commonalities from little leadership to big leadership. All that changes is the scope and scale of the leadership. The values and characteristics of the successful leader do not change.
I'm going to go back, though. I'm going to make a link between what you're saying now to my question around health and well-being. How do you support your own well-being? And you're talking about included in that, which did not used to be included when we talked about leadership.
Right.
What did not used to be included, very much included in athletics and sports, but not included really in management, was making it sustainable, having a sustainable source of energy, having a sustainable high performance, having really that, what are you doing to sustain, to feel internally well resourced, to lead well? One of the things that we have found out through our work with leaders and through assessments and all of that is that purpose, having a clear purpose, having meaning in life is like core. It's just one of those big rocks for people. And so I want to shift because I know you have been guided by a purpose probably since you were 10, maybe long before that. You and I've talked about your life story before. And I'd love to know the link that you see between purpose and peace. So my question is, how has your sense of purpose guided you in peace building? Because so much of your work has been peace building, whether it's public health, whether it's policy work, or whether it's how you lead and how you manage.
Thank you for that question. It's an important one. And so first, we'll define purpose. And when I look at purpose, whether it's in the boardroom, we call purpose a value proposition. When I'm in the field and I'm in the military or in the military and special forces, which is my background, purpose is, what is your mission? Mission and value proposition are essentially the same thing. What is it I'm here to do? What are my responsibilities? What is my timeline? What resources do I have to complete this mission? Who am I accountable to? And now get out of my way. I'm ready to execute my mission or my purpose. So every day you get up with a purpose. I have a laundry list of things that I want to accomplish. Some days it's not so busy. Other days it is. And I'm always asking, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? When I join a board, okay, what is it that I have that's going to add value to this board and value to shareholders if it's a public company? So the purpose then is the value proposition that's been stated. This company makes these widgets which help those people. What do I know about those widgets to make those widgets better, faster, more efficient, more effective to help those people that I have the privilege to serve as their board member? Okay, so it's bringing value. So when you connect purpose and mission, which is identical, or value proposition, then the question is, what value are you bringing to the table as a leader in those regards? And then you're back to, how do I earn the credibility in front of peers in a board? And whether the board is a small business, a startup, a Fortune 100 company, or the Senate or Congress or the National Security Council. You're sitting at the table because somebody saw something in you that you may not realize that's going to bring value. And so the sense for me always is this sense of urgency for purpose, that if I'm sitting here, what is it I need to say and do that brings value to what we're trying to complete? You can't be passive. And I think that you need to be, how would I say, have a hunger that every day you get up thinking, what am I missing? What's around the corner that I haven't seen? So it's almost a healthy paranoia
Hmm.
that because when I teach leadership, and especially military or in business, it's when you think you got a lock on the market and you relax, somebody's going to eat your lunch. Okay, and so that's how competitive it is out there. Whether it's a true enemy in battle or whether it's another company that's starting up that wants to take over the market that you own. Okay, so what are you doing to continue to bring value? It's really the driver for me as it relates to my purpose, whether it is a mission or whether it is a value proposition, or I can give you many anecdotes if you want to hear one. Anyway,
Well, actually, I'd love to
go
hear the
ahead.
connection you have between purpose and the question that I asked was
Yes,
around peace building.
yes. Let me go there. Great.
Link between purpose and peace building.
Yeah. Um, in a divided world that we live in today, not only our nation but the world, where
Hmm.
there's so much painful, divisive, malignant discourse
Hmm.
that somebody disagrees with you, they're all of a sudden the enemy. And we see it in our politics here, we see what's happening around the world, and it's caustic. And so many years ago, I started actually thinking about this, and that maybe by examples would be easier. In our United States, we have probably the strongest military in the world. We have nukes, we have every kind of arms, we have preventive measures, and that is an element of our national security. And the fact that we have all of those things provide a deterrent for others who would want to hurt us. It's unfortunate we live in a world that we have to be thinking those things, that somebody's going to come and harm us. And so there's another part of national security and safety, which we call soft power.
Hmm.
And soft power is our ability to project power through knowledge, through thoughtfulness, and through health. So that if we see unstable places around the world, for instance, where there's mass migration from Africa to the southern European continent now, and even on our own here, at our borders along the southwest border, for instance, okay? And you think, why are those people all coming here? Well, because they see opportunity, because they see a place that's better than where they're coming from, and they leave their meager belongings and risk their lives to come to a place that offers them hope and security. Well, soft power is a way that if we project that as a nation, so when we had the tsunamis in Indonesia, okay,
Hmm.
that really wasn't our responsibility. Those people were being decimated. It was when I was Surgeon General. We immediately mobilized all of our military, sent a hospital ship over there. And this is a country that had some tense relationships previously with the United States. We didn't always see eye to eye. And we the ship goes offshore, and of course, all of our people are in their military uniforms, and right away, that's kind of a standoff. And so our guys had to exit the boat on launches to come in. They couldn't dock at the dock, and they bought water and food. They helped to rebuild electricity, all of these things that are infrastructure that would let people stay in their homes rather than having mass migration where people will die
Mm.
and spread of disease. So it was interesting to me as I observed this. There was a little bit of a standoff that they weren't sure could they trust us, and so of course nobody was carrying weapons, but they still had uniforms on, and they were allowed to come into these villages, but then they had to go back to the boat at night. They could stay there. After a few days, what you saw happening was our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, they are public health officers. They're playing soccer with the kids. They're teaching them baseball. Okay, they're sitting down and eating with them in the village.
Mm.
After a couple of weeks, budget's gone. We have to leave. And the call that I got that was really the most moving for me from the health minister was, Surgeon General, we understand that your people have to leave, and why? I said, sir, we don't have the budget anymore. This week went beyond our budget. It was a privilege to help you. He said, but these are good people. We would like them to stay.
Mm.
We accomplished what you couldn't accomplish with bombs and bullets and anything else, but by leveraging a strength of the United States with soft power. And soft
Mhm.
power is being applying that science, that technology, every kind of guidance you can that allows people to thrive in those environments and hold on to their cultures, and us respecting their cultures, even though they're different than we are, we create stability. If there's stability, people don't want to fight you. It
Mhm.
leads to peace. They're willing to have discussions with you. So soft power is a very important tool that we don't make TV shows about, because all the military shows are bombing people and shooting people. And I lived that life. Yes, there's a time for that, but there is so much opportunity for us to project soft power, and through that create peace and stability in unstable places in the world and our own nation. So that's how I see it.
I love that example, Rich. I love the example, and it's a beautiful one, and it's such a pragmatic one and a real one that we've lived, and a great example of when purpose is peace building, when we are clear
Yes,
that our purpose is peace building, that there are these two macro strategies. One is the hard power that you talked about, that's more about deterrent or fighting when or defense when needed.
yes,
And then the other, which I'm hearing you say is um, possibly even more powerful when we get clear about it and use all of those tools, is soft power. It's how we build relationship. It's how we create stability and
building
community,
community.
relationship, stability.
Mhm.
It's how we like help lower the uncertainties for other people and then are
Yeah,
seen as really a force of good,
yeah.
really seen as a
Let
force
me
of
give you,
good.
I'll give you a couple of other examples in my own life. As a police officer, and at the time I ran a SWAT team as a SWAT team leader, and I was a homicide detective. But years back, when you'd show up at a scene, sometimes it would be somebody acting aberrantly with a gun or a knife and threatening people, mental health problem.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those people ended up being hurt, shot, because they had a lethal potential. But now in the military, and I mean in the law enforcement, there's mandatory teaching and de-escalation. So basically, how do you talk somebody off the cliff and make
Mhm.
friends with them? So I think it's another way. I guess it would look to me, it's kind of a soft power,
It
rather
is.
than coming in with brute force and saying I'm in charge and do it my way. Is to disarm the person and say, hey, what's the matter? Why are you so upset? Let's sit down and talk about it. Keep your distance so you're not hurt. But this whole idea of de-escalation is now being taught all over the country in our law enforcement, because a lot of times we recognize that this person is not dealing with reality. Let's talk them off that cliff, start a dialogue, have them put down the weapon, and make it a safe situation. And then treat that person with dignity and respect, take them into custody, get them to the mental health places that they need care, and so on. So even at the local level in law enforcement, I see it. When I look at the national level as well, and globally, as the example I gave you in Indonesia, it is terrific. And the other example I will give you is one that I love, and I've done this presentation before as Sesame Street as the ultimate advisors, ambassadors for us. And when you look at what they've accomplished in their, a little over half a century in existence, through puppets and through kindness, through compassion, through caring, and their messages have been translated into over 100 dialects and languages to 150 countries. And so look at that. Show me any export we've had in the United States of military or diplomacy that has had the effect around the world for peace and stability, kindness, caring, and seeing us all as humans rather than as enemies. Sesame Street is an amazing, amazing export that this United States has. And nobody ever thinks of it that way. But I did a presentation on it once, and as you know, I just wrote an op-ed about it. That it is another manifestation of soft power.
Mhm.
How can a bunch of puppets, engage with people in languages all over the world? And
Mhm.
when I traveled the world, I would see, Sesame Street characters speaking in Arabic in a remote village where the electricity is with a solar panel. There's no electricity in the community. And all the kids are sitting around in a circle watching Big Bird talk to them in Arabic. Okay. And telling them about peace and health and prosperity and do good. So I think, wow, there are elements of soft power there. And you have to appreciate them. And I think leadership is often thought of, I think, as being tough and strong, because that's what we see in the media. the muscled out guy with the guns, and we're going to solve the problem. But yet there's another side of leadership that is soft, that
Mhm.
brings people together, that creates community, that finds common values in humanity, so we don't have problems.
It's so interesting. I was just about to say, in those three examples, you're talking about leadership. So Sesame Street being example, someone or some team got clear that they wanted to be a force of good. They wanted to be a
Yes,
force of
yes,
stability. They wanted to be a force to
yes,
support dignity, human dignity, and humanity.
yes,
And so Sesame Street, came into existence and then spread because it's contagious. It's contagious. People want to be part of that. And so it's interesting. It's, what has to happen in the minds and hearts and experiences of
mhm,
leaders where they realize that this kind of soft power, the word soft is problematic because
yes,
people think of that as weak,
yes, weak. Yes,
but
you're absolutely
soft
right.
power,
That's absolutely right.
this kind of power, which is more sustainable, more connecting, grows contagiously, provides stability. What needs to happen in leaders' experiences for us to
Yeah.
see the influence it has, the
Well,
positive influence.
Renee, the quick three examples I want to give you that just by names. Think of these three global leaders who never lifted a weapon, never spoke a word of harm or divisiveness. Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
Think of
Hmm.
what they accomplished by their own version of soft power, by
Hmm.
mobilizing communities, by building peace, prosperity, and so on. And of course, when you look at Mandela imprisoned, they couldn't change him, but yet he spoke truth to power. And you look at Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement where we are today. We're still struggling, but boy, we've come a long way. And then you look at Gandhi. My gosh, just the epitome of peace and bringing people
Yeah.
together. So I think there are examples out there in front of us. Unfortunately, they're not on primetime TV like all of the guns and bullets and things like that, and the power projections that we have, which are entertaining. In fact, when I was Surgeon General, my a lot of my staff would be frustrated, and they'd be going, Surgeon General, what you're saying is true, but nobody's listening, and they would get frustrated, and I'd say to them, okay, look at your TV guides, okay? What programs do you see? And they'd say, yeah, there's a program about the emergency room, police, SWAT teams that were the headlines for all the TV shows. I said, so that's entertainment for the public. I said, where do you see anything about what we're doing in public health and community health? Not
Hmm.
much. I said, there is. It's on PBS, and we're the only ones watching. That's the
Hmm.
problem. Okay. So, I mean, in our environment, as you know, Renee, there are these shining lights of peace, prosperity, thriving, and yet they're kind of overshadowed by all of the media stuff. There's a lot of good going on, but it doesn't make the news like the big stuff. That
I agree.
the last gunshot wound, the drunk driver killing a bunch of people, and so on. That are headlines. But if somebody in a small town immunizes 10,000 children, maybe you get a one-liner after the sports page.
Hmm. I agree. There's, when you think about just your immediate experience in life, your neighborhood, your family, I was in the hospital last week for a weird incident with my knee. That's all better, by the way. And the staff there was incredible. So there's all these people who are already taking responsibility for
Yeah,
promoting good through who they are. It's interesting. We've made a couple of distinctions. One is hard power, soft power. The other one that I really hear you saying, and I 500% agree with, is it's not just about your outer behavior, what you do or what you say, but it's about who you are. Like how are you showing up?
yep,
What are you clear about your own purpose? And what you want your purpose to be and what are you radiating?
yep,
And how are you connecting people? So I want to shift for a little bit
yes,
because we've
yes.
talked about, world conflict and division and all of that. And given your experience, I think you can uniquely share what has been the impact of the conflict around the world on health and well-being of citizens around the world. What do we know right now about how living in environments of division, living in environments of conflict, the impact it has on our physical, emotional, social, mental, all aspects. of our health and well-being.
Well, the impact is huge and playing out before us today. If you just look to Africa and the Sudan, you look to what's happening in other locations around the world, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, there. Children are dying from hunger. Maternal child mortality is skyrocketing because moms can't get prenatal care. So there is a significant amount of deleterious physical health that we see playing out with morbidity and mortality. Around the world in general, several 100,000 women a year die in childbirth. Mm. Hundreds of thousands of children have no access to clean water and sanitation. What happens to their growth? If they make it through those childhood years, then they grow up incomplete. The mind hasn't developed appropriately. Physically, they don't have the knowledge. So they become those people who maybe are going to rise up later in protest or be involved in mass migration to try and get to someplace else, which is what we're seeing happening all over the world now, where indigenous people are willing to risk their life to go someplace else, to just get a meal, get clean water, have someplace to live. So this is a major problem around the world when this divisiveness occurs. A lot of it is because of people seeking power. And it is the challenge of maintaining a democracy or heading toward autocracy and dictatorship. And the issue of, do you trust that one single person will be able to lead you in fair and impartial way, the hypothetical benevolent dictator that will take care of you? But in history tells us that doesn't happen, that lots get left behind. And we see that happening all over the world. We look at China, we look at Russia, we look at some of the Caribbean nations where we see more autocracy. And what you see there is people that have lost their voice, places where the mortality and morbidity are higher, access to healthcare is poor. So all around us in this world of 8 billion people, we are seeing these examples of failed leadership. On the other hand, we take it back to the US, the founding fathers figured out a way they thought would work. Where the colonies were formed, and you had a bunch of European men, largely, coming forward and saying, we have a new way of doing things. We got this thing called democracy. And they write a constitution, and you get a Bill of Rights. And it's predicated on building community, that we all have a voice in how the leadership is executed. And we, the people, elect the leader who is best going to serve us. So, as long as the system can be upheld with integrity, and we know that the leaders that are elected are there because of a true democratic election, then we do okay. Thriving stops, though, in any country where you start to see the power shift, where the guardrails fall, where the House and the Senate in whatever country you're speaking about don't have the input they used to have, where the laws are overlooked or forgotten or trampled by those who are in quote unquote leadership positions. And whether you're looking at Russia, whether you're looking at China, we see this all over the world, and arguably even starting in our own country. So the public has to make a decision. What kind of leadership do you want? Do you really want a person who you've elected, which you may disagree with, but they've earned your trust that that person will work selflessly for the greater good? Or do you want a person who gets to do whatever he or she wants and will tell you when you can speak and when you can't speak? Or will lead to intimidation and coercion rather than inspiration? And when I teach leadership, as my colleagues do as well, there's two kinds of leaders. There are those who get the title and then they just beat it into you through coercion or intimidation, what you can and can't do. And if you say something they don't like, you become a bad guy. And they'll turn the government on you. They'll do all kinds of things. And we see it in Russia, we see it in China. On the other hand, the inspirational leader inspires people to be more than they thought they could be. They work harder, they get up earlier for the greater good. They're collectively working together. And those are the real leaders. The ones that we have that we call leaders that work by intimidation and coercion, those are not leaders. They are not. Because the true leader knows that their job is to inspire you to accomplish more than you thought was possible. And you do that through trust and integrity, as we've spoken about.
Yeah, and I hear you even saying that, but beyond you were an individual leader, there's also kind of what's built into the institution. You know, it's individuals, but it's also what's built into the institution, because you talked about laws and kind of norms when those things are broken, when power is concentrated. I'm wondering, what shifts do you believe when you are speak and connect with people around the world? What shifts do you believe are needed in our institutions around the world to make thriving, to make peace, to make more people having a perception of stability, the feeling of stability, because we also want to be innovative, right? But stability central to those institutions. What shifts do you think need to happen?
First, I'd say first and foremost, no matter where you're looking, in the United States or any other country, the people have to look toward their leadership and have trust in the leadership. So we're going from the single leader and trust and integrity to the big picture of
Right.
of whatever your body of politic is, that people go, those are good people. And I think that with those people that are embedded in those organizations, and if people see that there is a true democratic process where the differing opinions, which is what the founding fathers said, it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, it'll be an ongoing experiment. But as Winston Churchill had said, that democracy is terrible, except for all other forms of government that we have found. And so the point being that as the average person reading their paper, watching their newscast, is watching, and they see a debate between the two sides, but they see it's a legitimate debate, and one side is arguing this, the cost, the efficiency, and you think, that's good. A vibrant, thriving democracy needs those discussions, and then the output should be what is best for the greater good. And in a democracy, nobody gets everything, but everybody gets something. And that's what democracy is predicated on. And you have community. You have people that work together. You have people that you can disagree with, and they did the best they could. And yet the elected officials have a tough job because they're trying to satisfy needs of a very broad population. So nobody said it's going to be easy. But your alternative is, if you don't do that the right way and the public don't trust you, then the system falls apart where there is no trust. And they look for other ways to be able to participate in the system. So what do? They typically revert to their tribes. So as history tells us, whether you're looking at Mussolini, Hitler, Franco, all of these guys who were dictators, Maduro down in Venezuela, now they keep the population divided. And you keep the population divided. And so this is not real leadership. This is really manipulating the population. And you tell them, you can't trust this. You don't trust me. Don't trust the press. They lie. I'm the only one telling you the truth. And so when that happens, and that's instability, the public then reverts to their tribes, left or right. And then the parties start fighting each other. Who benefits? The person who keeps you divided, because it keeps him in power, because that's what's happening. And in the military, we are taught these techniques. They're called psyops, psychological operations. And when we use them against our adversaries, it actually weakens the infrastructure of our adversaries, for instance, in combat, okay? And it makes it easier for us to accomplish our mission, which we believe is a good mission wherever we are. So the techniques we see rolling out now are ones that are not foreign to people like me who spent time in special forces, where this is how you teach our troops in special operations to be able to weaken a population that is causing a problem, and then be able to come in with democracy. And so it's not a surprise to me what I see happening with a divided population in our country, people that we'll loosely call leaders that are spewing hateful, painful, divisive messages to keep people apart, which doesn't benefit the public, and a very few people then benefit. That's not democracy any longer. So when we speak of leadership, again, in the simplest forms, it's those people that we trust to do the right thing. They are part of a larger organization, which is where our discussion is now. The public having confidence that, yeah, I disagree with them, but I think it's a tough job. They really tried to do the best. And then there's an output. And sometimes you get everything you want. Sometimes you only get a little of what you want, depending on where you are. But when the public, through an open press and through open discussion and participation, see that the system is working, even though sometimes painfully to them, then okay, I'll live with it because there's nothing better. But when they don't see that anymore and they revert to their tribes, then one tribe is just fighting against the other. And no matter what one side says, the other side is always right, wrong or right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the place we are in today here, and we see it around the world as well. And it underscores the question: is democracy a viable form of governance moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we witnessing, is this how it ends? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes back to leadership. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to end if we have leaders in places that people trust, and those leaders make up organizations that we rely on to make good decisions on our behalf. Then the system can work. Even though, as the founding father said 250 years ago, without digital help, where they wrote things on parchment and gave it to a guy on a horse who read it as a town crier to that little town to tell them what was going on. Think about their wisdom 250 years ago, that they figured out that as leaders, we had to build a system that protected us from those people who will always be there, that have the propensity to seek power at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do a House and a Senate and a court, the public then will trust us because no one person has all the power. It's divided. And we come together in these bodies that we've created to make a decision that's ostensibly good for the individual person. Back to your trust in government, back to your trust in organizations.
Yeah.
But when the pillars are falling apart, then true leadership is no longer there.
It's interesting that the way we're having this conversation, because you talked about the kind of the psyops that you learn for division, psyops for manipulating things in a particular way. And I guess my question was, and you were getting there, I'm getting the answer, is, but I didn't know this was my question. It's almost like, well, okay, well, what are the psyops for thriving? What are the psyops for thriving? What are
Love
the,
it.
you know?
Yes, it's a great question.
And you're basically saying it's all about making sure power is decentralized, making sure that there is trust inherent in the system, trust of people, trust in the system,
Yes.
and how important these things are, making sure that to the extent we can, that leaders, including all of us, learn to see in a bigger game, not just from ego, but see that we're all of us in this nation, we're all of us on this planet, we're all need to figure out how to live together. So how can we find the solutions that work for all, rather than just work for a few? So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, when you look at the continuum from the average citizen to those they pick locally for their leadership, to those they pick for the state, then they pick up to the national, and then our connections around the world with others and soft power. A lot of what we talk about, the education has to improve at the lower level, grammar school, high school, college, so that people grow up understanding that it's not a one-sum game, that democracy is tough, it's challenging, but if we elect the right people who are willing to serve selflessly for the greater good of the body that they are entrusted with their destiny, the system works. But when people breach their integrity, when people are in there more for their self-aggrandizement or their own benefit, and the public suffers, the system falls apart. The guardrails fall apart. And that's where we are. And we see it around the world. It's not just here. Look at what happened with Hitler. Look what happened with Mussolini. Look what happened with Franco. All of those people during the Second World War. And the irony is, as much as we are in a leadership struggle in our nation today, in the Second World War, when it ended, what did the United States do? Well, we had a Marshall Plan. And the public was really enraged for a while because we said we're going to help rebuild Japan and Germany, but they're our enemies. Let them die.
Mm.
And they said, no, you don't understand. If we don't let them rebuild, they will be a constant source of problem. And Russia was involved then too, wanting to manipulate. So think about what we did to think beyond the hatred we had at the time for these two countries who caused the war, but seeing a future where if we created stability, these nations would at some point become our allies. And Japan is now a great economy and doing well. Germany's economy, but it's because we formed the World Bank, we formed the World Health Organization, we formed the Pan American Health Organization. All of these organizations, the USAID, we stood up to provide soft power to the rest of the world to create peace and stability, which is your original question. How do we get it out there? And they did. But now we're dismantling some of those things. What's going to happen when we don't have the peace? What happens to the children who are not eating? USAID. What happens when we don't have a seat at the table with NATO, or we don't care if we're at that table? Okay? The only reason we've held Russia and others in check globally is because our leadership had the forethought to have an organization that represents 26, 27 countries, and that if you attack one of us, you attack all of us. So
Mhm.
Russia stays back until they get into the Ukraine and saw a weak spot. You see? So
Yeah.
that's all comes back to leadership as well. You're thinking bigger picture. And General Marshall and the Marshall Plan, I thought was extraordinary because it gave way to so many soft power things that helped economies build, help people to get a job, help people to have health care. Then they don't want to fight you anymore. They're living their own lives in whatever government they want. But when you take down those pillars, you have a problem and you create instability. That comes back to leadership.
Yeah, so given all you've seen, and I'm going to ask you this question not really as the US Surgeon, past US Surgeon General or a US citizen, but really as a global leader when it comes to well-being. Given everything you've seen, because you've been all around the world, working, playing, experiencing people around the world, what hope do you have for humanity's future? What makes you hopeful?
I think about that every day, Renee. I am cautiously optimistic, but I'm worried because I see these bad actors all over the world,
Hmm.
and I see the once extraordinary gravitas that this nation had, our nation, and the credibility it had for the greater good of a world that's struggling. And I see that eroding now with so
Hmm.
much divisiveness with our own country, where we have people that in leadership positions, quote unquote, who use the color of your skin, your ethnicity, all the terms that you hear these things coming from elected officials, categorizing people based on those things, categorizing people based on their religion. And yet we have an elected official that a very high level who said his goal is to make a Christian nation once again. Well, didn't the founding fathers talk about freedom of religion? And you could come here and be anything you want. And if you want to be an atheist, you can be. But as long as you are a person of good character and are contributing, that's okay. That's what America was about. To get away from a king, to get away from somebody who tells you how you can go to church and what prayers you can say or what you can't say. So the idea of our democracy was so rich that everybody wanted to be like us. That's what we got the power. Everybody wanted to come to a place where they can have an opinion, okay, and not get arrested for it, and have a chance to get a job. But when I have elected officials talking about recreating a Christian nation, well, I mean, if they said recreating a Muslim nation, it doesn't make a difference. That is antithetical to the founding fathers' documents that we live on, that we swear an oath to in military, police, that we are going to swear the oath to this Constitution. And so
So then what gives you hope, Rich? What gives you hope
it gives
globally?
me hope that often we've had challenges before and we self-correct.
Hmm.
And the only time it happens is when the people rise up and say no more of this. And that's what I'm hoping, that the people will rise up in the next elections here and around the world and say, no, we don't want that. Okay. We're willing to complain about democracy, but everybody gets a fair shake. Okay. Here, if you don't have that, you may never get a fair shake, or you get your fair shake if you kiss the ring, whoever
Mm-hmm.
has that ring on. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we can rise up again, and people, good citizens, will say, this is a binary choice. Do I want one person to make all the decisions for me and I have no say in how this works? And I can't get ahead unless that person gives me permission? Or do I want to compete in an open free market where my words count and I can elect officials who I think will, represent me best? That's democracy. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
binary decision that faces us here in the United States. In spite of all the chatter and everything else, that's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. So
And I
your
said
hope is in
Winston
people.
Churchill summarized it best. That democracy is painful, it's terrible, and et cetera, et cetera. But it is the best form of government of all others we tried.
Mm-hmm. So your hope is people. Your hope is
Yes,
people
it's
around the
always
world.
about the people. It's always
Around
about the
the
people.
people.
Whether it was the French storming the Bastille, in the 1780s, 90s, whenever that was, and other things around the world, it's when the people rise up and say, okay, enough. And it's the power of the vote. It's the power of community coming together and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that it's really going to come down to, if you still want to have a say every day in what goes on, and you can go on the street corner and complain about that congressman or senator or CEO. This is that form of government. If you want this form of government, you no longer can say those things, because if they're not aligned with the single guy in charge, you may get in trouble. You may
Mm-hmm.
go to jail. Maybe you'll lose your job. Maybe there'll be lawsuits launched against you. You know, so that's why I say it's really a binary decision now. Although there's so much chatter, people get confused. It really comes down to, what kind of leadership do you want?
Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of leadership do you want, and what kind of leadership are you? Because you're
Absolutely.
also saying that is what kind of leader, even without a title or a role, there's still the choice to vote. There's still the making your voice heard. There's still so it's what kind of leadership
Yes,
do we also want to be as people? What kind of
the collective
responsibility?
voice of the people is imparted to that person that they send forward, and they serve 2, 4, or 6 years. And that's the beauty of the system, because after a couple of years, if they haven't done their job, you can start looking to replace the person. All
Mhm.
right. But it's one of the imperfections of our democracy, is that the founding fathers never envisioned that we would have perpetual terms, okay, or that we have all the funny money that comes into elections, or this thing we call gerrymandering now. Let's
Mhm.
fix the district so it represents this group more than that group. And
Mhm.
so the 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 time of our Constitution, most of the people were local merchants or farmers, and they were expected to serve for a finite amount of time, bring forward the ideas of that community, and then go back home and be a farmer again.
Mhm.
Now you go in perpetuity, and really the fuel for your office often is special interest groups that you have to represent, because they're paying you a whole lot of money.
Mhm.
That's not for everybody. I'm just saying, in general, it is very much the antithesis of what the founding fathers first saw, and the purity of a true democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm aware of our time, and I know you've got another meeting because you and I could talk for hours. We really
Yes,
could talk for
I
hours
always
about
have great
leadership.
discussions with you, Renee.
You too, and I really appreciate this one. I appreciate it so much. So
Well,
before
thank you
hanging
for all
today.
you do. I think you're doing behind the scenes and quietly in the business that you've created to educate people and identify leadership qualities, and in effect, building a national community of global leaders. Is
Mhm.
what you're doing, and by your education. And so I really appreciate it, for one, because knowing you now for many years and having these discussions, I see where you're taking it. And I would say, tongue in cheek, as the Surgeon General, it's just what the doctor ordered.
Great. Thank you, Rich. I really
Okay.
appreciate it.